Good morning, friends. I am so excited this morning to have on the podcast with me. Y'all already know who she is, but I'm going to give her a little introduction and then we're going to get started. Christa Hardin, y'all. I've got her. I have her today. And I'm very excited because Christa is going to talk about her new book, The Enneagram and Marriage. Now, do you say and marriage or plus marriage?
I really use both, and you're going to laugh when I tell you that the book is called The Enneagram in Marriage. But I own all the domains, so don't worry.
Oh, okay. Because you use the plus symbol, like
Yes.
and I was like, does she say and? Well, okay, great. And because it all adds up.
It
See what I
does.
did
Oh, that
there?
was good.
Oh, okay. I'm going to calm down. I'm just very excited to have you because I've been I've been following your work for a long time. You have a beautiful social media account with so much great information and insight pertinent to the Enneagram and individuals in general, but more specifically to your work with marriage and couples. And so before we jump right into the exciting news that you have a book about to launch, I want to say, first of all, let me give you the whole name of the book because it's absolutely beautiful. So it's The Enneagram in Marriage, not plus marriage, The Enneagram in Marriage, your guide to thriving together for your unique pairing. I love that. I love that so much. So tell me, Christa, why did you know this book had to be written?
That's such a good question. And I have written several books for my clients over the years, and I never tried to publish them larger than just my clients and I. I put them right onto Amazon for easy purchase and tried to just make sure that everyone had these systems that I was using through my coaching and therapy. I've been doing this for 20 years. And so that went great. And I just had a few clients. And then what happened was I started to be able to max out of my local clients. And then I said, how am I going to share my work in a larger way? So I chatted with some coaching friends and they encouraged me to start a podcast and to do courses. And the podcast really was enjoyable. It took off. And so what happened after that was, we both know, the Enneagram started to get some lift off in the world. And
Mhm.
so then I had a lot more people who were asking for help, even than I had had in my regular practice. So that really led me to say, okay, we have all these podcasts, but you know what? Let's do something in one format. And that really helped me to say, this time I don't want to do a quick book that I do on my own, especially after learning an expansive tool like the Enneagram. I realized I want others to be a part of this too. And so I researched to get an agent and do it the traditional publishing way this time. And I got an agent and then a publisher, Baker Bookhouse. I'm so grateful. It was such a good fit. My editor there's a 4.
Oh,
So it really cool to there was some choice. And so I was able to say, she's the best fit because I know some of your listeners obviously know the Enneagram. And my, editor there, Steph Duncan Smith, is a 4 who has this depth that when I'm bouncing around and theorizing and doing systems, she could continue to say, Christa, let's speak into your heart. And we can
mhm.
talk about that as we go on.
Oh boy, can we? I have a lot in common right there, and we will get to that. My husband and I do a lot of work, mainly with individuals who are in the process of deconstructing certain aspects of their life. We work with a lot of people who are leaving, their faith communities or trying to move beyond. And what we have found through 25 years of doing this together, mainly him, this is a lot him, but I come in a lot when we do have a couple. But what we found is when one of the partners, if it is a couple, when one is looking to expand or grow within any dimension of their life, be it, a worldview. We work a lot with spiral dynamics and integral theory, if you're familiar
Yeah.
with that. So when
Mhm.
you're moving from a fundamental uh,
Mm.
way of thinking and moving up the the worldview ladder. And especially if you've within that begun doing your own personal insight, at work and seeing yourself beyond the traditional time. When one of you is doing the work and the other is not, what a mess it can be, which is why I absolutely will answer your question for you also. And that if this is something that's going to enhance your marriage, you have to do it together. You have to at least be on the same page of, I'm ready to evolve. So
Yes.
right?
Yeah, it's so helpful when you have somebody who's saying, I'm willing to work with you. Even if they're just like, I'm willing to let you teach me. Like one woman came up to me at church this week and she said, and I do go to a very traditional church. Interestingly, my pastor's wife came on and she's a 5. So I think that I picked a church that has a 6-5, very thinking type pastoral team who actually uses the Enneagram for their staff. And so what this woman said to me this week was, I'm so excited for your book. And she goes, my husband said, you read it for me and then tell me about it. And so, but he was open, he was open to learning. And I love working with people with all faith backgrounds or who don't have a faith background. And I loved that when I went through this book, I found a publisher who was willing to do that. And that was so meaningful to me because I said, I don't know how spiritually this book is going to land with audience, with my own sharing, because I'm not particular to somebody having to be the same faith as me. And it was such a freedom when Baker Bookhouse, reminded me like, we have our faith values, but we understand this is a world that may not share them. And so they were just so freedom giving. So you might find, just so audience knows, a few faith references that are born out of my own convictions, but there's nothing in there to, as you can imagine, to force anybody to do anything. I'm just like, here's a prayer you might want to pray for forgiveness. And I love that your audience is still growing like we are. And I love that we're both reminding everyone here, like, please try to bring your spouse with you if you can.
Yeah, I'll tell you on a personal level, my husband has done this, high level consulting and within, like I said, mainly spiral dynamics along with theology. So that's quite a combination how we have evolved in our spirituality that might even transcend a form-based religion. And that's what you're saying. Faith is a different word these days, where it used to mean one way of box thinking. And you're referencing that with whatever spiritual journey you're on. This is for everyone. But when he was doing this through the years, I don't know how many years, I was like, I really wish you'd look at the Enneagram. And, he's like, okay, no, nothing yes or no about it. He knew it was, quote, my thing, right? And the more I began to evolve in this, I was like, you can't have collectives without having the individuals within the collectives. Once he really saw the big picture of why the Enneagram was so important, he was all in, and it has transformed our marriage.
Oh my gosh,
And
that's
I need you
awesome.
to, yes, I want you to know that, because what you just said about, even if just one reads it, wife or husband, and they begin to incorporate it, not in a fire hose way,
Right.
but in that communication thing. Once the light comes on, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
anyway, thanks for letting me say that, but we value it so much. So
Oh, I'm so glad. That's the best any of us could really hear, is that it's blessing somebody's marriage and that you're not forcing each other into a box. You're just inviting. You're like, oh my goodness, this has transformed my life.
yeah.
And I want to share it with you. And especially because your spouse often, some of you listening know this, sees you getting a bit healthier. And then they're leaning in a little more. Oh, your flaws that I've been trying to tell you about for years.
Right.
That's good.
Well, the beautiful part was when I do look at my own, my own growth journey there. And to be able to say, as a lot of your readers will understand, you can't pull somebody into this, right away. Sometimes it takes some time, husband, wife, it's either one, but to say, I've noticed this in myself.
Yeah.
And when it becomes like, I see where can sometimes come across as this way, I think that's an invitation to say, it's not like you need to see why you're acting the way you do.
Yeah, it's an invitation. I love that. And it sounds like you and your husband, you were patient with him to really come into it himself, to learn and to see his growth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a great journey, but that's ours. Well, I want to go ahead and ask you a few questions from the book, because oh my gosh, we could talk about just these few questions forever. And I want to go straight from the book, some things that I've read. And yes, it's not being released, but I have a pre-copy where I got to read some of it. So let me just use some quotes that you've said, and then you explain a little further, because some of these things, and my gosh, Christa, I can't go through everything. And I don't want to, because that gives away the book, and I don't want to do that. But let me start with this quote of yours, and I'm going to have to read it because I want you to really get into this one. You say, what does the integration of two personality types mean for us and our relationship? Then you say, don't worry, we're not going for codependence here, but the understanding that together you create a sort of dance of interdependence. Can you speak about that?
Oh, you
The
are
floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. It's such a joy to be able to really invite our listeners into this, because what happens, as many of us know in marriage, is that we feel like our spouse is supposed to really give us all of our needs. And when we get dysregulated, we look to them to help fix that. And that's good and healthy to a point. But often we marry and we don't have the perfectly secure attachment style, or we go through something really tough like child rearing or illness or job loss or number of other things. And it just hurts when our spouse is also hurting and doing big life things, and we're pushing and pushing and pushing for them to meet our needs. It's almost like they're in the water and we're pushing them down, trying to get ourselves up, is what it feels like to them. And the same thing can happen maybe to you, vice versa, when you remember your spouse was going down and then they were pushing on you and you're like, hold on, I can't breathe either. So a lot of the times when we land in healthier marriage spaces, we can start to say, I'm going to get my self-care rhythms in order so that I can have some emotional, spiritual, physical care each day, even if it's just a little bit, and get better regulation, maybe even do some therapy or coaching, maybe learn the Enneagram, read a book like this, and just start to invite myself into some healthier self-soothing behaviors. And then I'm going to be less likely to be codependent, where I'm leaning so hard on them for everything. And now I'm more attractive to them. And the other piece I want to share about the interdependence is there's still a level of co-regulating. In other words, really being able to be balancing for each other. If I'm joyful, I can bring you into some joy. If I'm peaceful, I can bring you into some peace. Actually, those are your pairings right there. You're 9 and 7.
Yeah, they are our parents. Yeah, mine, yes.
Yes, exactly. That's the 9-7 glow. So, and I call that a glow because you're really shining together more beautifully when you invite one another versus that forcing or that distancing.
You said just a short phrase that should just be on all of our walls when we get into these situations, and that is, I can't breathe either.
Mm.
And if you can remember that your
Mm.
spouse is feeling that at times either, wow,
Mm.
Krista, that was beautiful. Yeah. Instead of pushing each other or trying to pull the other one. Remember, co-regulate. Great word.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the next one. And again, we have not rehearsed this, so I hope you don't mind me just pulling out some quotes and saying, explain this.
I love it.
Okay, you say, none of us are perfect, and even with the best of intentions, things fall apart. We're all intentionally or unintentionally shaped or influenced by generations coming up alongside us or under us. I think that is such a pivotal point in your book, is to understand, even with the tools of the Enneagram or whatever it is, we bring generations of, ingrained thinking with us. Tell me how you see those influences factoring into these relationships.
Well, I think that I talk about this a bit in the book too with this, and thank you for bringing that up, is this fundamental attribution error that we make, thinking that we're just a little bit healthier than our spouses. And when we have an issue, it's because we're internally struggling. When they have an issue, it's a bit more of the external. They're bad, they're wrong. There's a bit more judgment. Instead of us really looking to see, actually, we both have a long lineage, not just one generation, which most people do a lot of one generation back work because we're like, that's the closest one. It's all my parents' fault. I've done it. Wes has done it. My husband, we've all done it. I
Mainly
asked
your parents have done it.
right. And I asked my teen daughter, because she's on my podcast Monday, and like, I'm like, final question, will you be in therapy? And she's like, 100. The truth is, we all do our best, but we fall short, like we said here. And so it's a nice reminder when we're trying to do this marriage work to say, okay, we have long lineages. It's not just starting here. There's a lot of generations to repair, and it's not all on our shoulders. So let's thank the people in the past for the good that they even got us here surviving. Let's set the boundaries we need to set. Let's do the forgiveness work we need to do, as well as, the reconciliation work when appropriate. Because let's face it, sometimes we're not going to reconcile with the people around us or who came up before us because they're not able to be healthy around us. So we're like, well, you can't pull me down that water. But if you can, let's do that. If you can get the strengths from the past, along with noticing the hardships from the past, you guys will have some good things too. You'll be able to say, we had to make a boundary change with that relative, but something we appreciated from that relative was this, and we can bring that into our marriage, and we can bless them even if we need the boundary, versus this hard-nosed, all your fault, black and white thinking that we usually bring into marriage if we're not in a regulated state.
Man, you've been doing this work a while. It is just so beautiful to hear the words just roll right off your tongue. This is funny, you probably heard this, but I know there was, reference, whatever. This couple gets married and they're doing Christmas, and her family did it one way and his family did another. And they were very conflicting. Like one did Christmas Eve and one did Christmas Day, or whatever the exceptions were. And the phrase was, "You do it wrong."
Yeah.
and, and it can be as trivial as, gosh, what am I thinking? The way you serve tea. You do it wrong. No, tea is sweet in the South, and I know. But that implication that not did we just do it different, but your family did it wrong.
Yeah, it's hard. That's really hard. And we've all done that. And so when we come to places of maturity, it's time for us to be mature and to say, maybe a little bit of banter around it, but like generally speaking, let's just honor what we did get. And let's also set the boundaries we need to. And I think people think they can't honor because they have to set the boundaries, but it's like, you can do both. You can have your safe place and honor what you got. And that's something that I'm just starting to learn in these past few years myself. And it's been such a gift to me.
See, I love that you said that, because you've been doing this therapy and coaching for 20 years, and yet you are honest enough to say, I am still doing my own.
Yeah. Because I read Boundaries by Cloud and Townsend 20 years back, of course. But, doing that and living that out with a spouse, especially my spouse is a social one, which you saw from the book. So I tell a few stories in there, which were gut wrenching and hard to tell. But like I said, my 4 editor helped me to do that. There were some tears. So it was really beautiful to see him really grow too, to be able to really understand why I needed to set some of the boundaries. And then sometimes he also helps me to not set too many.
Yeah. I love that about the book, is you bring in so many personal stories, and along the way, you talk about the personal experiences with some of your clients, who I'm sure are not their actual names, but you can really,
Compilations of many over the years.
yes, yes. But you can really see yourself in part of it, all of it, it depends, but to see really the real life examples of this is what it looks like. I love that you have that personal aspect to this book. And one of the things that I love about this, in an ocean, it seems, of people who are, writing Enneagram books left and right, and that's not bad. There's some wonderful things, but and when you go step by step with giving an overview of each Enneagram type, which I think is so important, because I know a lot of people, one of the spouses or the other, are probably like, I don't know anything about it. I don't know what that means at all. So here's but what you do at the end of each descriptive overview is you say, this is how it looks in marriage. And I thought, the way you did it, it's just a snippet to give you like that inkling, that little light flashes like, oh, tell me more, tell me more.
Good. That's great to hear.
Oh
Thank you.
yeah, it was like a tease, like, oh, let's discuss.
Yay, I'm so glad. That makes me happy because you and I know we don't want anything to be boring as sevens. So if we're going to do the same thing, we have to do it differently.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, for those of you listening, if you have not picked up, because we've said it kind of fast, both Christa and I are type 7s. Now, what's your instinct? Just
Self-pres.
oh, see, we are. And
Yeah.
that is such a big, important difference, because I'm social.
Yeah, that is a difference.
Oh,
Huge.
that pres instinct is very, very different. But we're not going to talk about that today.
Okay, yes.
I want to get into what you are known for, I think, at least in the past couple of years, is the glow. Yeah. The Enneagram glow. Now, again, I haven't asked you these questions ahead of time, and you want to say, I need to save that for the book. But the acronym, do you want to talk about that? What you say glow stands for?
Well, it's a couple of different pieces, but I do give an acronym in the book that I'll leave for the readers to walk through, but it's nice to have in this way that they have a little mini roadmap. And I'm sure if you're listening, you're like, I hear about the Enneagram. It can be complex. It's not an elevator pitch, as my daughter said. It's not an easy elevator pitch, that is. And yet, what can we do? Like, what can all of us do? So I give you even a little glow acronym for how you can just shine out in marriage in the book. And so, but I also talk about finding your glow and your light together in a series of stages that I don't know if you recognize in the book. So can I talk a bit about that?
I wanted to ask that, but I thought, well, I don't want to give everything away, but that I would love. Yes, please do.
And I feel like don't worry about giving things away because there's so much in the book for each person listening that's very nuanced. So don't feel like we're giving it all away on this interview. There's a lot more, but I do want you to know, if you're listening, that at the beginning of a relationship, there's usually sort of a light that you cast very easily. And it's the time in your marriage when you just shine together and you're like in that honeymoon stage. And I just met somebody at the post office like that today. He was like, I'm in my first year and we're just shining and we're happy and it's easy and it's light. And we're then healing one another as we move into some depths together. And we're able to kind of do what we talked about when we said that you're in those stages of just really allowing each other to be your safe place and to change you in little tiny ways that you never used to, like going out to the movies or out to eat or playing basketball, whatever it is. Now you've really expanded together. Now, unfortunately, after this stage of the healing, we usually come into a space of really going to the depths and the shadows. And it may take us a few years to get there, but oftentimes by about that 7-year mark, we're in a lower state of marriage because statistically, marriage goes down in quality over years. Often because, let's face it, having kids is hard, even though they're the best. And so I won't go on with every stage, but I just want couples to understand that I wrote this book for couples who are feeling like they might be in the shadows or heading into the shadows or just trying to get out of the shadows. And so oftentimes divorce happens there and we hit total darkness. And so my book is really about helping you to find your light again. And it might not even be the same marriage. It might even be a resurrected marriage, but there are so many beautiful ways that you can cast that light together once you each know your gifts. Like yours, we said, is joy and peace together. And when you're healthy, what a beautiful light you cast together, right?
Right. Yes.
Mm.
But we also, and
Yeah.
this is just plain Enneagram, but we understand we are both in the positive outlook
Yeah.
triangle. 2 7s and 9s are all in that positive outlook, which is great. You would think that was just, well,
Yeah.
there has to be heavenly bliss in a marriage until you realize we have denied looking
Yeah.
at the really
Yeah.
hard things. And life is not going to let you push
Mm.
it aside forever. And
Mm.
so what you're talking about in this book, when you talk about the steps, and there's 6 steps, this is not the acronym for GLOW. This is
Yeah.
how you move. And you started with SHINE.
Yeah.
And I won't move down through the rest of them, except to say what a gift it is to be able to say, I am here, like on a roadmap. And if you're reading this book and you've been married 10, 15 years, you're like, oh yeah, I remember the SHINE stage, right?
Yep.
And that's not where I am.
Mhm.
And I'm not, but I am here. But going through each of the stages lets
Yes.
you see how you've evolved as a couple. And maybe that, oh, we are here in the shadows. So I see the trajectory of your outline like a roadmap.
Mm. Ooh, I love that because I've always seen marriage as sort of a roadmap. And I used to think I would have a show called Get Into the Love Lane because I was always using that analogy and instead it became Enneagram and marriage. But it's just funny to hear you say that you see that. And it is actually so comforting for all of us because I know we all do this when we're feeling this fear of like, what if I pick the wrong person or all of that. We forget that every couple goes through that and there's no perfect pairing. And we might talk more about that, but that's just something for everyone to be comforted on.
But I love this, and you are so right. I I love this book for any stage of marriage, of course. But if you can see this on the early part of your marriage in the beginning, because we're also naive and we think, oh no, not us. You don't
Not
know.
me.
I remember telling my therapist,
Yeah.
you don't know us. He's like, well, I have 20 years of many just like you. And oh, to see this on the front end where you're not, the rug's not just pulled out from underneath you. Suddenly you're like, oh, so you don't live in fear of what's coming,
Right. Right. Which
but
you're
you
like, that would
have
be normal.
like, okay, this is where we are. I think it would make a great
Yeah.
what is it? A wedding gift.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Enjoy the stage you're in, but also don't be too afraid to notice when things shift and ebb and flow and challenges come. So I'm with you. Yes. Let's start earlier. You and I are so happy we gained this, but had we gotten it even earlier, it would have been such a gift.
Oh my goodness. In
Ooh,
so many ways.
I
I won't
know.
go down that road. But yes, yes, have it now. And you made a quick reference to, but let me ask you, do you think there are any pairings that just absolutely will not work?
No, I don't, because every single pairing has come to me and said, we have a beautiful marriage or we have a very difficult marriage. And so that's the beauty of getting to work with so many people across Instagram and really get in there also in my coaching sessions and in my membership group to really just dig in and see there's no perfect pairing, but yet we all can be beautiful together and cast a beautiful light together when we're healthy. But the couples out there that do well are the ones who are able to say, here's our strengths, here's our shadows, here's the places we might struggle, 2 aggressive assertive types, 2 positive types, 1 logical type, 1 positive type, all these different pieces. We could say 1 heart type, 1 thinking type. We each bring a strength and we each have blind spots. So it's just about us covering that with compassion, curiosity, patience. It takes a long time to make any significant change. So even if we're reading this book or any other book, it's like, okay, now I'm on the journey and I can take baby steps toward that. And
Mm,
so just remember that as we're all working together, we need to rest. We don't need to quit, but we do need to rest sometimes in between all this work we're doing because it's a lifetime journey for all of us.
absolutely. And knowing that on the front end,
Yeah.
when people say, I've had young couples, and sometimes the woman will say, he's just not the man I married. And I
Yeah.
said, oh my gosh, how lucky are you?
Yeah.
Aren't you thankful? And it's like, well, what? So, well, are you the
Oh,
same as you were, 6 years ago? And what you said is it's a lifetime. It's a lifetime of looking forward to and traversing the
yeah.
choppy waters sometimes. But yeah, to know, oh, we get to change.
Mm.
We don't stagnate. And
Yes. And we invite each other into those changes.
oh, yes, yes. I love that you have written this. The very first question I asked you, why did you think you needed to write this?
Mm.
Because it needs to be
Yeah.
talked about. We've spent a lot of times behind our little curtains, like the Wizard of Oz, and you pull it back and it's like, oh no, we're all floundering at
That's
times.
a really good point.
So
Yeah,
you're
and when I see the marriage statistics and the ways people are trying to handle middle marriage strife, that was another reason. Because I was like, we don't need to add third parties into our marriage. You can't have the, even outside of a faith background, you can't have the oxytocin exchange and release of true connection and bonding when there's other parties in the marriage, or you're really hurting one another, just trying to be mean to get a rise.
Mm,
And this is honestly what some of the marriage books out there that are really big books are saying. And what it tells us is, like you said, everyone's floundering. What can we do? Well, I think what we can do is grow, find our gifts, get good self care, make good memories, take some adventures. There's a lot we can do. So we don't have to stagnate, like you said. Now, we can't force our spouse onto the journey, but what we can do is set the boundaries we need. Like I'm sure you've had to do at times, and every spouse, including my husband and me both, is to say, here's what's happening for both of us at this stage of life. Here's what I'm going to need to regulate. Here's what I hope for our marriage. And then let them share the same thing and respect each other within that. And if it's something unhealthy or toxic, then get help. Additionally, besides the book, go to a therapist, coach, pastor, find somebody who you trust in your community to help you guys walk through. Because sometimes we do have a moral lapse too, where I've had couples say, I want to invite that third party into the marriage. And then it's horrible for them. It's a nightmare. There's suicidal ideation. And they were going in fairly innocently thinking this will be, it will spice things up. And it's just hard. It brings trauma. So I'm just asking couples, try to be honoring of each other, even while you shift, if that makes sense.
oh, beautiful.
Mm.
So beautiful to say that. Yeah. Again, being able to say, I need help, like you
Mhm.
said. we-
Mhm.
Who doesn't need help?
Yeah.
I'm, this is off the topic, but I've started watercoloring again after I did it like 20 years ago, but not long, just a little bit, just enough to be like, oh, that was fun. What's the next thing I do? Because again, 20 years
Aw,
ago, I was doing wanted to do all the things, but
good.
I wanted to sit down and just paint, right? And be good.
Yeah.
I love watercolor. I look at all these beautiful images and tutorials, and it's like, I want to be good
Yeah.
today, but
Yeah.
I have got to have help. And
Mm.
so the patience that I've found, one thing is it's just been so good for me as a 7 to, whoo, be totally present, and to learn that these are things within our types that
Mm,
we may not even recognize at first. So to start with this, I need help. And the
yeah.
first thing I need to learn is, how do I do the brush stroke? What makes it flow and glow?
Yes, I love
Yeah.
that.
But to say, I've never done marriage before, I need help.
Yeah.
I think we have this real stigma around,
Mm,
asking or admitting we need help in relationships. We think they just come naturally.
right.
Um, but we read parenting books, we read all sorts of other things. So, like you said,
Good point.
let's say I just want a little help, and don't wait till you're in crisis.
Yeah.
For Pete's
Oh,
sakes.
yes. Yeah. Right when you're feeling like there's a little bit of a disconnect, that's a great time to start.
Yeah, yeah. Or if you're in crisis, go. But
Yes, please
either
also
way.
go. Yes. Yeah. We've had
Oh,
those seasons too.
oh yes, yes. But let me ask you, and we'll wrap it up this way. Let's talk about you and Wes. You
Oh,
kind of, threw it out there. But
yeah.
if you read your book, I love that. Gosh, you guys have been together since you were children. I mean,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And
True.
so you are a 7 and he is a
Type 1. So
1.
he's an improver perfectionist. And we're very opposites attract couple. Because he was really, trying to make the whole town good. And I was trying to make the whole town wild. So kind of had to chase me for quite a while at the beginning. Um, but I prefer sort of to do the chasing sometimes as a 7. So it was kind of like, I don't know what you're doing here, but this is not going to work. You can't chase me down. Um, but then when I saw how kind he was, you get the story in the book, but it's funny because he really is a very kind, loving, gentle person on the interior of all that testosterone and the judging spirit of a 1, and maybe him when he wasn't at his best, because that was there too. And he kind of giggles about himself. Well, he would not use the word giggle. He
No.
laughs about himself as this masculine kind of guy running around town and not being insightful. So he's like, you changed me so much. But I would say he still has that air about him of a 1 who is very methodical, and I still have the freedom loving 7 air about me, and really looking at the gray and seeing between the lines and asking a million questions. And so I think that we really blessed each other to find one another and to balance one another out. And also to really, and this is where we're talking about with this glow, we really gift each other with what we needed. And I talk about that in the book, but like Wes gifted me with a staying presence to do hard things. And
Yes.
I gifted him with the allowance to do joyful things. And I give him a great new perspective every day. And sometimes I even see the way I rubbed off on him, where this morning he didn't sleep very well last night because he's going to get that sleep apnea surgery soon. And he's just having the struggle with sleep. But he was able to do some positive reframing, even when of course, his window of tolerance was going to be lower. And I loved that because now he could step into his day with joy versus waking up in an angry, sort of instinctual type 1 way. And I didn't have to do that for him. He's learning that from me. And of course, I'm learning from him how did I write this book? I married somebody who really respects ethics and taking time to do things well and right. And so I just feel like every couple pairing, even trust me, doesn't have to be ours, whatever one you have, there's such unique gifts you each bring each other. So I'm glad you noticed that in the book.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And what you said earlier about our parents or grandparents, you just, when you said, learn to appreciate the
Mm-hmm.
things and then set the boundaries or whatever. But within a marriage, find those areas like you're talking about.
Yeah, I love that. Yes,
Yes.
got it.
I appreciate, and gosh, we could go off on this
Yeah.
topic and we won't, but you address the arrows a little bit in the book, right? What they are. And wow, that 1-7 pairing of the
Yeah.
arrows. Yeah.
Yeah. We share a lot of commonalities anyway, so we need each other in that unique way.
Yes. And knowing this
Yeah.
gives you language. I think part of oh my gosh, just globally and within the United States and what's going on here. And let's don't focus on anything negative, what's going on today, but it's because we don't know how to communicate with each other. We don't have language. So certain words immediately, get somebody all riled up. And it's like, that's not what I meant at all. And so what you're saying and what you're teaching in this is, let's put language around our needs, our behaviors, right? And all these things. So we speak each other's language.
Yeah. Yes. And to be able to say, thank you for complimenting me in ways that I don't have. But I love what you said, Danae, is bringing our spouse the gifts without forcing it upon them is huge. And setting your own boundaries with a spouse who, let's be honest, some days they're dysregulated and you're not. And
Yeah.
so there's also a sense of like, not just setting boundaries with the in-laws or extended family, but even your spouse on those days to say like, I love you. How can I support you with what I have if I'm not drowning that day? Or if I am, I can say, hey, you know what, today I'm over the top, but I want to do this for you this week. How can we do that without setting boundaries? And so just feel free to set boundaries with your spouse so you can have more interdependence. I just want to remind everybody of that so that you can love them better.
Yep. Yep. I love that. I love that you did this book. I would keep you and talk all day, but I know you got to go. And I just want to again say, please get this book, read this book, pass it on, share the word, put your selfie up with your book, because I think this is one of the most important conversations that absolutely must be had. Because if we are doing our own work, but we're in relationship, and any relationship, let's be honest, but especially an intimate one like this, it's gonna become top heavy if you're not having this conversation together.
Yes. Ooh, such a good way of saying that. Delicious. Thank
Oh,
you so
delicious.
much. Yes, you glow, girl.
Uh, yes. Okay. Do you have any closing words?
Well, if you guys are just looking for more resources, visit enneagramandmarriage.com or listen to the podcast, and you have a lot there too. But thank you for listening with us, and thank you for having me. You're awesome, and they are learning so much from you. I know your listeners love you, and they learn
Oh,
about wings and arrows and types and all the rest that I'm not sharing. They're learning from you. So thank you for educating everybody too and shining so brightly.
oh, thank you. A little mutual love fest here. Thank you, Christa, for being on with us. And I very much look forward to communicating in the future.